If you try to do anything, you're going to get the door slammed in your face, period. And so I've had that happen. And anyone that has success, I think, has had that happen. Now, if someone asks that question, I'm scared about raising capital. I'm scared about buying my first deal. What do I do? Well, I ask them, okay, what happens if you just told me you're at your day job, you have 30 rentals, you hate it, you get phone calls at the middle of the night, you hate it. Okay, what happens in 3 years if nothing changes? Okay, well, my marriage sucks now, my kids hate me, or whatever, right? And so you go down the list, okay, so what if you don't take a risk? It doesn't change for 3 years, right? And maybe longer, 5 years, 7 years. Imagine what you're feeling now, prolonged for 3 years, and now it's getting worse. Or you could pick up the phone, or you can invest in mentoring, or you can buy your first apartment complex and start taking those actual steps. And that's what I tell people, you have to start taking risks. You have to start getting out there.
Caleb, thanks for joining us today. I know we just talked. You're coming from San Diego, so you're right next door to us here in San Diego. So welcome to Getting the Cash Flow Game.
Yeah, Kenny, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, I'm in Phoenix, so heading over to. I always vacation over there though, in San Diego.
Yeah. I know people say we live in Arizona for the taxes; it's cheaper, and we come and use California for the beaches and the weather. I'm like, it's not a bad.
That's it.
It's not a bad idea.
Not bad.
So I was reading a little bit about you. So you're kind of in the real estate investment game. You got a podcast going on. Can you kind of bring us back and how you kind of landed at this point in your life and what brought you here?
Yeah, just the quick 2-minute version. I started investing at a young age. When I was 19 is when I started my real estate investing career. Always had, I'd say I was a B student, was never really that great in school or stood out, kind of an entrepreneur at heart. And I really was forced kind of into starting my own business whenever I saw my mom. She had knee surgery. She was in a tough place to either heal and recover. She was around 6 years old. And so she could stay home, dip into her savings, but prolong retirement. She did not have any other passive income coming in, or she could go back to work and make money, but, go through some physical pain. And so she decided to go back to work, Kenny. And man, she would come home just in tears, just crying. And so that was my big motivation, my big push to want to start investing was to help her retire early. And then 2, I saw what having a job did, or what that could do to somebody. And I didn't want that for myself. And a caveat to that, I want to say I'm not a job hater, right? Like we definitely still need jobs, but just me, I'm just not made that way. But if someone does like their job, praise God, man, that's great. And so that was my starting point. I started in residential real estate and my background is in restaurant management. I did that for 5 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then after 3 years of residential, scaled into apartments. And today I focus on 75 plus units.
Wow. Okay. So back up a little bit. I'm guessing here, because did you go to college?
I did not.
Okay. So I was just guessing. I'm like, okay. So I went, but I never finished. So I think when you say there's nothing wrong with jobs, I just think just like school, I was in school when I was high school. I'm like, this is boring. I wasn't engaged. Can I get out of here? I was young too. I'm like, yeah, I want to get into real estate. Mom's like, you need to go to college, even though I had to pay for college and go. And then my friends are making money. And I was like, I got to get out of here. This is just, I'm not going to use this. So you're probably like the same mentality where it's like, I get it.
Oh yeah.
This is not for me. I got to get out of here. Just out of curiosity, how old are you now?
I'm 25.
Damn, you're young. Okay, cool. Well, that's good. No, It's cool because I think this just shows a lot of people you can come out and you can just make things happen, school or no school. It doesn't matter. It's really just, your drive, your will. So what's really driving you, what drove you is watching your mom, realizing I don't want the corporate route. I don't want the 401k. There's got to be a better way. I've got to be able to support my mom, my family, all that stuff. So this is where the hustle and the drive came from.
That's right. And definitely blessed with, incredible mentors. I'd say one thing that was really pivotal for me was finding a mentor in every stage of my business. If I was buying my first rental property, I found a mentor. If it was buying my first apartment complex, I found a mentor. And if it was raising capital, I found a mentor for that as well. And that didn't mean I have to pay for them. I just found someone that was kind of like 6 to 18 months ahead of me, added value to them. And so that's one thing I tell everyone starting off. If you want to scale and level up from wherever you're at, find someone that has what you want and then add value to that person and then learn from them.
I mean, honestly, that's really, really smart. And I think people get intimidated that, oh, I don't want to ask, I want to bother him. But like you just said, I think the thing is, instead of asking, say, when you talk to him, how can I add value to you? What is something you can bring to them where they're like, wow, I need to help this guy out. What can I do for you? So kind of walk me through your journey. How did you end up in real estate? I mean, so were you said you're managing restaurants, which I always say, like, if you can manage restaurants, you could probably manage real estate, because managing a restaurant's, employees, the chefs, the people, the consumers, the food, there's a lot of stuff going on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. And so how I started actually in network marketing. So, or multi-level marketing, with Amway. And that was my first kind of business. And after a year of doing that, I decided to take a step back, and I always still had that entrepreneurial bug. And I thought, man, how can I make money? How can I be successful? And when you type that up in YouTube, real estate investing comes up, HGTV, flipping homes. And I just started using all these free resources, and I came across BiggerPockets and learned the vocabulary, learned about house hacking. And I wanted to find a strategy that suited well for me in my position, 19 years old, not a college background, not a big savings account. My parents were not wealthy, just middle-class citizens. So I didn't have a lot of money. So I needed to start somewhere with low capital, buying a house hack. So I bought a fourplex that was $300,000. The down payment was like $10,500, and I had that saved up. And so that was kind of a great starting point for me. And then kind of from there, I used OPM, other people's money, and just started at whatever kind of base point I could get into.
And then, so the units you have now, are you technically a syndicator? Are they yours? How is your portfolio kind of look now these days?
So primarily syndications and a couple of joint ventures, depending on the deal size, roles and responsibilities, right? But you've probably heard this before. If you own a rental, it's like owning a grape. But if you own an apartment complex, it's like owning a watermelon, but you own a sliver of that watermelon. And both can get you to your goal, right? It's not one's better than the other. I would say I am in apartments for a reason. I'm kind of biased towards apartments, and we can get into that. But that's how I started. We'll get
into that for sure. Mm-hmm. So I think the big thing, and you know this too, right? Especially like BiggerPockets community, especially people your age, they're probably coming up to you that are, sub 25, 21, 18, 19, 20, hey, Caleb, like, how do I scale? How do I get there? Right. Do you think for you, you just said it wasn't a money thing. It's not like the mom and dad had money or you got some inheritance. Would you say it's more of a mindset thing that really got you there? Or would you say it was just more of like, I just kept going, and then it would break through a barrier, go, break through a barrier?
Yeah. And honestly, I do have people call me, in their 30s and their 40s, and they've been investing in residential for so long. And they say, you know what, it's not getting me here. I'm so tired of dealing with my tenants. I want to scale to apartments because it operates more like a business. But for me, at least, the turning point was I had always been networking for the first 3 years of residential investing. Starting very young, that's what I needed to do, right? I didn't know anybody, didn't have any money. So let me just meet people, add value to them, and then we can partner. And that's how we'll grow in wealth together. So I went to my first apartment real estate meetup though, and the guest host shared two things with me that changed my life and really forced me to start investing in apartments. One was he shared that you're going to be green regardless of when you start in apartments. You could have 6 months of residential investing experience or 15 years. You're going to be just as green if you start in apartments because it's two completely different animals, two completely different industries. Now, the second thing that he shared with me was his first deal. So he bought this apartment complex with a couple partners and they owned it for 4.5 years. He sold it. And once he sold it, he alone took home $2.5 million. Now, I was just doing the math and I was thinking, okay, 4.5 years, $2.5 million, one deal. There's no way I can do that in residential real estate. And of course, the way he did that was forced appreciation. right? And he bought it right, structured it right. And so there's a lot of things that went into that, but still there's just no way that I could do that I saw in residential real estate. And that's how I could really build legacy wealth. And so those are the two things that turned me onto apartments.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. There's an interview, it was a while ago, maybe 5-6 years ago. It was Grant Cardone interviewed Dean Graziosi. And when, the market crashed, a lot of guys went and bought houses because they were cheap. And then I don't know if you've seen that one where Dean was like, I was managing 2,000, 2,500 homes. Like, he's like, this is insane. Mm-hmm. And they're cash flowing and have equity. But then he says, the hardest thing is, how do I sell all those homes at the same time and 1031 out to apartments? And that's the other thing is, so people come to you, they go, hey, I got 30 homes, I got all this equity, but I want to get apartments. What do? I'm like, I got to sell them. Like, how do you do that? I'm like, that's the problem. What? That's always the problem. When you hear a guy go, I have 100 homes and he wants to sell them, like, do you know the kind of coordination and brain damage and headache you have to do to coordinate all this to make it happen, to buy, even if you have the capital to do a reverse exchange? So one of the things our mentors taught us young here in San Diego about apartments too is apartments are better because if you buy a 10, 20 unit and you want to scale to the next one or trade up, you're not selling 20 homes. You don't have 20 roofs. It's like, it's very easy to cash out, refi, BRRRR it or trade up. So that's, I think, one of the things for us that's really attractive, which I'm sure when you talk to people in residential, been doing it 15 years, they have all these homes, they want to get out of them. But that's kind of a nightmare, right? I mean, it's just like,
it is. It takes years.
Deal with that?
Yeah, I know guys that they own businesses, automotive shops, and 15 rentals, and it takes them 2 years to sell off all the rentals, and it's such a headache. The cash flow, you get equity out of them, but it's a lot more seamless and easy, at least from that point of view with apartments.
Yeah, and you mentioned something too, which we look at it. When you go buy an apartment building that's 75 units, because I know and above that you look at, and it's been there for 20 years, you're buying an existing business. Mm-hmm. And people go, I never thought of it that way. I'm like, it's had tenants, it's had problems, it's had cash flow, it's got debt, whatever, it's had history. So just like you managing a restaurant, if you went and you said, I'm going to leave the restaurant, go buy a restaurant, and it's already active, you're probably going in there, I'm buying this because I can make more revenue, I can run it better, I can do this, I can do that. Is that that's what you're saying is what I was just going back to when you say it's like a business? I don't think people look at apartments like that. I think they just look at it's like an apartment. I look at it as business that's been there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I see that. And you're kind of selling the contracts, right? Especially at least with multifamily, because if you have 100 units, let's say that's 100 separate contracts. And now whenever let's say you're buying it, you're buying that contract, that income that's guaranteed. Of course, it's not, they could break their lease and whatever, but that contract's in place. So for 12 months or however long that lease is, you have that income coming in. Then you add on top of that laundry, carport income, ratio utility billing system, all of it. And like you said, Kenny, it is a business. And so it has that income, it has expenses, it operates just like a business, only it's multifamily.
Yeah. So let's go back for a minute, because I think those will be helpful for a lot of people, somebody young watching this that wants to get started. I think the biggest fear is not, basically it sounds like you didn't know anybody, didn't have money, anything. So you found, and like a lot of people is, how do I meet people? There's bigger pockets. But I think if you're investing locally like you is, go to all the meetups, go to every meetup and then find out, okay, I went to 10 different meetups a few times. These are the best ones for me. Then you start meeting mentors and this and that, and maybe people you partner with. So a couple questions. Number one is, when you started, you obviously have partners. Did you find those partners at meetups?
I did. Yeah. My first meetup.
Go figure.
Right? My first partner.
Isn't that it's not that hard. So I guess the biggest second question is, I think the biggest one for people is, how do you get over for you? Because I actually don't raise money. We bought our own stuff with our own money, which is slower, but it's fine. How did you raise money? How did you get over that fear? Because it is a fear, right? You're like, what if I call, people say no, and I got to like a deal? Because that is a very thing going from like, if I got a building, I can get the debt, but how in the hell do I get the money? It's like,
mm-hmm. Yeah. And I have been, I think that's with sales, man, it's with anything in life. If you try to do anything, you're going to get the door slammed in your face, period. And so I've had that happen. And anyone that has success, I think, has had that happen. Now, if someone asks that question, I'm scared about raising capital, I'm scared about buying my first deal, what do I do? Well, I ask them, okay, what happens if you just told me you're at your day job, you have 30 rentals, you hate it, you get phone calls at the middle of the night, You hate it. Okay. What happens in 3 years if nothing changes? Okay. Well, my marriage sucks now. My kids hate me or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And so you go down the list. Okay. So what if you don't take a risk? It doesn't change for 3 years. Right. And maybe longer, 5 years, 7 years. Imagine what you're feeling now prolonged for 3 years. And now it's getting worse. Or you could pick up the phone, or you can invest in mentoring, or you can buy your first apartment complex and start taking those actual steps. And that's what I tell people. You have to start taking risks. You have to start getting out there. And I've had, deals where it doesn't go well. I've had phone calls where I don't want to have them. It just didn't go how I thought. And so, yeah, I still fell and stumbled, but I'm moving, right? I'm not at my day job at my restaurant where I used to be. Praise the Lord. I'm not there. And so here we are today, and then you do that over time, and 12 months of taking those risks. Imagine the things you learn, right? You thought it would be your outcome or your goal would be X. But now, you're already towards that goal in 6 months. And so now your goal is Y. And so you have a whole nother frame of mind. You've learned a whole nother set of skills because you started taking risks. And so that's what I tell people, man. Look at the cost of doing nothing and then asking yourself, is it worth it?
Yeah. And the other thing too is like just how much you grow as a person. Like you had this fear, you got over it. Man, that's like so big, right? Like when you close, like I always tell people, our big mentors here were always like, just get in the game, get in the game, get in the game. You're like, what are you talking about? It's like, close your first deal and we're going to have a different conversation. Because the conversation now, like, I don't know, it's like, now it's like, I closed the deal, the confidence, the mind shift, right? The whole thing is so huge for any of us. Like, even if you just never bought a primary residence, you buy one, you just went through a process that you might have thought about for 5 years. That was scary. How am I going to do this to save the money? Right? Like any big things in life.
Yeah. If you just do that first deal, man, I'm telling you. So I'll tell you the story for me. It took me 14 months to close on my first deal. I found it after like 11 or 12, but to close it, 14 months. And then after that, like year or month, let's say 3 months after that, I bought my next one. And then 2 months after that, I bought 2 more. Wow. And so you see, you just buy the first one.
That is crazy.
You build up those teams, the foundation, and then it just snowballs after that.
Where did you obviously have partners. Is this the same partners on every deal? Are you guys kind of like a joint now at the hip, or is it different partners for different deals?
It's different partners. Again, that was something like you think it's going to go one way. You're going to partner with this person for 5-10 years. Or you're going to want to, and then things change, right? So my first deal was a JV where I'm the lead, and then we have 3 other partners, and then the other ones, it was with the same kind of group. And then I started my own company, and now I just work with different strategic partners for different markets, different deal sizes, and all that, and different roles too, right? We all wear different hats and can bring X amount of capital. We have X amount of experience. So now it just depends. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, what's your strength? What's your role?
Yeah. That's a good question. I'd say teaching, leadership, and management. I just love that. I think God's blessed me with that, just a teacher heart. And so I love teaching and kind of walking with a property manager. I don't like construction management. I will tell you, I've learned that. But walking alongside the property manager, and I'm in acquisitions. I'm somewhat of a perfectionist. So you give me a spreadsheet, I want to make sure all the numbers line up. So I think those are some of the roles, asset management. But I would love to be focused on capital raising because, again, going in this business, I had to get my foot in the door. That was through acquisitions and underwriting and finding deals. But now I've learned that it's a lot simpler if you can just bring equity, focus on that investor relationship, right? And then invest in deals with quality sponsors that you've worked with in the past or that you believe in and they have a track record. And so I'd love to just focus on capital raising. But I'd say today I'm probably 50% acquisitions and 50% capital raising.
And then, excuse me, when you get started, okay, so let's go back and I want to start getting into more of the details of what you're buying stuff. So when you go back and you're somebody and you want to start raising capital, how did you get started?
It all went back to networking. Again, just networking. I think you have KPIs. So my first goal was to contact 5 new people every day. And that's grown over time, but you just develop those relationships. And that's how I started. And you're always also talking and You don't want to be the person that just asks people for money. Let's say you meet someone at church or family friends, someone that has cash and they'd be a great investor, just meet with them for 3 months, just get coffee a couple times, talk with them, have conversations and provide value, right? Alex Hormozi said something that was so amazing, where if you just want to add value, and continue to add value until they feel like they have to reciprocate in some way, right? And for someone starting off, it's kind of challenging. You're like, dude, I don't know how to add value. I don't have a website. I don't have a bunch of lead magnets. I don't have the resources. I don't have the bandwidth. I don't know how to do that. And that's okay, right? I started off there too. But once
how did you add value? Let's say you get out there, your first time you're meeting with people and you're like, shoot, how am I going to do this? Right? Like take us back to those times. You're like, okay, I got to add value. What can I do? What does that look like?
You ask them to coffee, right? So that first mentor or that partner, that potential partner I met at that first apartment meetup, get coffee with them, So I met with 2 guys. I met with probably 4 or 5 guys actually from that meetup. But the guy that was the host, he had like 250 million assets under management. And I'm like, man, if I can just work with this guy, I'm in. Like, that's the big dog. And he's telling me, yeah, I need a $50 million deal or $500,000, in equity. And I'm 21. Dude, I don't have a $50 million deal in my back pocket. I'm sorry, but I don't have that. Or he wanted like some marketing help. And so for that guy, I couldn't add value to him. But this next guy that I did get coffee with, he was 6 to 18 months ahead of me. And he said, hey, man, I can teach you underwriting. You bring me deals. Or what I also did with him is I brought him some limited partners that I knew they had cash, they wanted to invest, and I connected those two. And I said, hey, Mark, why don't you invest with Michael? And he's got this solid deal. He's one of my partners. I'm working with him. So Michael was able to teach me underwriting. And then I proved my own value by literally bringing him connections, passive investors. And, that connection has resulted today, I think over $200,000, maybe $300,000 in passive investments from this one passive investor. So that's a couple ways that I was able to add value.
We've been working on this for the past few months.
We always want to bring as much value as we possibly can. And our partner, Prime Corporate Services, is all about bringing you a service you can't get anywhere else at a price you can't get anywhere else. Whether you're new to owning a business or owning a property, or you're an experienced property owner or investor, Prime Corporate Services is not only going to help you, but they're going to make the process so much easier. So if you book a call, the first thing they're going to do for you is help you understand what your business structure should look like, your corporate structure, tax planning, estate planning, all of that. Maybe you're saying, I'm brand new to starting a business and all this sounds foreign and complicated. Remember, this company helps new people just getting started every day. They're going to help you form the entity that's best for you and walk you through the process. Before I found this company, we paid thousands of dollars to other attorneys, CPAs, and consultants to try to understand exactly how we need to be structured to be as protected as possible. We've also gone the other route and used online platforms to form entities which unnecessarily put us at risk. You guys, you don't have to do that with this company. They'll do all of these things for you at a reasonable price, so you never have to think about saving money at the expense of exposing yourself to liability. We've searched high and low, and you will not find this much value anywhere else. All you have to do is schedule a free call today. Just go to primecorporateservices.info/GITCG. Once again, that's primecorporateservices.info/GITCG. We'll also leave the info for you in the show notes.
What was your, when you kind of look back, what was your aha moment?
Aha moment for residential
just kind of like when you pivot it and you're like, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I got it, Did you have a moment where you're like, was it the first deal, big deal, apartment deal?
Yeah. I think the first one for me was that first meetup and those 2 things I shared earlier of the guy that he showed those 2 things and it really affected me. But I would say the first aha moment for me was when I decided to leave my job. And how that came into fruition was I met with a friend of mine, dinner, and he had left his job a year earlier. And I had like years more experience than he did. I had more units than he did. He owned like 2 properties, but this dude, he was going to like Thailand, safaris, Hawaii, and like living it up, And I'm like, and I'm at my day job and I'm like, okay, man, tell me how you did that. Yeah. What am I missing? Right. Yeah. And he paused and he said, Caleb, knowing you, I think you're resourceful enough. You'll just figure it out. So if you left your job, build your parachute on the way down and figure it out. And I thought, and I'm kind of of the ilk where
how old were you at that time?
how old was I? 24, 23, something like that. So once I realized something, I kind of just take action. And 3 months later, I left my job. So that was that moment for me.
Are you married, have kids, anything, or?
No, I'm not. So that's,
Okay. That's
a
okay.
good blessing.
Okay. Yeah. That's why I'm like, do this when you're young. You can afford to kind of mess up, in a way.
Or, people that they're married, their spouse, you have to have that conversation with your spouse. But if they're bringing home some income and you can focus on this business for 12 months, 18 months, and you have that support system, do it, run with it. If you have that support system.
Yeah. So let's dive into it. So, let's just ask the question, why multifamily? I know we kind of went over a little bit, but what is when you're talking to somebody that's going to give you money and they're like, well, Caleb, I'm talking to this guy that's buying industrial. I'm talking to this guy that's buying triple net, or, I'm talking to this guy that wants me to invest in his restaurant. Like, why is multifamily just so great? Why do you love it so much?
Yeah. Well, people always need a place to live. So I've seen what has happened in office after COVID. 40% of office buildings are now vacant. And so there's that piece of it. Now, scale of economy, right? You have one building, 20 units under it, one roof, one sewer line. You have the landscaping bills, right, on top of that. And so it's housing, and there's always going to be a need for kind of that B, C class housing, because whenever we're in a recession, you have those class A, cream of the crop in the nice, sexy part of town, brand new units, and people with money are living there. But whenever the recession comes, those people living in the A market, they move down to a B. And the same thing for a B. Those ones that were in a B earlier, they move down to a C. And that C level, that those residents, they don't want to move, right? If they go down to a D, I mean, you're in a war zone, right? You got prostitutes, you got drug deals, you got gang activity. And so they're able to stay in that C because the prices are still there. But that's, for me at least, job security, right? That B, C class market. So forced appreciation, right? So if I own a rental property, the value of my home is dependent upon comparables, my neighbor's house and what it sold for. But if I own an apartment complex, I raise the NOI, the net operating income, that drives that's called forced appreciation. If I can raise the income, if I can raise rents $200 across 20 units, I can drive the value of my 20 unit property at a 6 cap, let's say by $400,000 just by increasing rents by $200.
Crazy how it works.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So those are a couple things that come to mind.
So are you primarily investing in your backyard there, or are you kind of different markets?
Different markets. I started commercial 2-3 years ago. And so in 2020, 2021, Phoenix was just so hot, Phoenix, DFW, people were putting up $1 million EMD hard day one. It's so, okay, I'm not going to compete. I like Tucson, Texas, all over Texas. I'm kind of hesitant with DFW because there's so much new builds going on, and coastal states I'm staying away from because of insurance. I'm expecting insurance premiums to increase 30% next year, just from other insurance professionals I've spoken with. And then Oklahoma. So AZ, Texas, Oklahoma.
And why do you like those markets so much? Is it job growth? Is it how you can get people out quick? Insurance? Is it like the whole list, kind of like the typical things, or is there anything like not typical that you like about it?
They all have their pros and cons. For example, Oklahoma as a state has the highest insurance premiums out of all 50 states. Right.
Wow, that's crazy.
And you think, oh, well, I don't want to invest in Oklahoma, but the cap rates are high. And anyway, so they're all red states. They're all business friendly. And so they all have, again, their flaws. Texas tax rates suck. Arizona tax rates are incredible. So they all have their pros and cons, but overall red states, business friendly, and landlord friendly tenant laws, population growth. We want to invest, of course, in markets that are growing. So I'm not just going to invest in Arizona, but I'm looking at Tucson specifically, Texas, different markets, Oklahoma, same thing, different markets. So growing markets, that's another thing.
Does Tucson have a lot of lot of growth right now over Phoenix or, something like that? Or why Tucson over a Phoenix?
In Phoenix, I'm still seeing a lot of construction happening. And so that's going to compress the absorption rate. So rents are starting to decrease here.
I heard. Yeah.
And in Tucson, we're expecting to have a 6% increase over the next 2 years, just organically because of a lack of construction. So, and prices in Phoenix, for my opinion, they still need to come down, probably 30 grand per door.
Wow.
And that's just what I'm seeing. But Tucson deals are still penciling and it still makes sense.
So the deals that you have, you're locked in on good debt? Did you do longer term debt? Any floater debt? Any issues there?
Yeah, we do have one floater.
Freddie Mac?
No, it was a bridge product.
Bridge? Okay.
It was bridge. And so we wanted to self-fund it. So the cap rate or the rate cap was more expensive for like 15 months, or we could just reserve. We could raise an extra $100,000 and keep that in reserve and kind of mitigate that risk ourselves. So we've been pausing distributions. We're still positive cash flow, but again, we're just waiting. We want to make sure we have high vacancy. We're keeping that in line, or high occupancy.
Yeah.
And so we're still positive cash flow, but again, man, people that did not get rate caps, did not plan for that, they're in hot water.
Problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how is you're there in Arizona. I know people that invested there. I think they definitely were. I don't know if they were buying right? Because, in this last market, if you didn't buy right, if you didn't put the right debt on there, you could be in some serious pain right now. I know people that have called to get capital calls. They're not getting a call back. They're not getting the money. So they're either fire selling or they're giving the keys back, So when you look at different markets, is there any markets you're seeing where you're starting to see that type of activity or a lot of pain where you're not, whether maybe you're kind of like, that could be an opportunity in a year or something like that? Anything you're witnessing like that at a larger scale?
Yeah, I think there's blood in the water, right? I'm seeing there's portfolios, 15 units or 15 properties, probably 2,000 plus units in Texas, where the owner, the syndicator, he decided to bring management in-house. And so in a year, all of his properties are in the crapper. And LPs are getting 10 cents on the dollar for their investment. Wow. But that's kind of like a one-off thing, right?
Yeah.
But overall, I looked at 2 deals this week, and the one in particular, and the broker said, they're going to lose money on this deal. I'm seeing that in Texas, all over. Yeah. In Oklahoma, the guy bought it 2 years ago for $15 million, and his whisper price is $13 million today. And that's just a whisper, right? So there's a lot of blood in the water, man. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity in the next couple of years, especially in 2024. Is going to be an interesting time, man. So, which I don't ever want to see people hurt or suffer. At the same time, it provides opportunity for us, right?
For sure. Is there any market that you're not in, would love to get in, or you're super excited about where you think there's going to be tremendous opportunity?
I think Alabama is a great market just because it's a non-union state. It's a red state, landlord friendly, high forecasted job growth. So it meets all the metrics. And I've ran at deals in Alabama. I've also stretched myself too thin, meaning I've looked in, 10 states, and that's 10 different how insurance works there, and 10 different ways how to calculate taxes. And so, I'm focusing on 3, but one market that I would love to get into is Alabama.
Yeah. My buddy, Ricky Caruth was interviewing Grant, and whether you like him or not, and Grant was saying the opportunity. He's like, "Oh, are you picking up deals? You looking?" And Grant was like, he wasn't really saying the opportunity is, oh, people are fire selling, or obviously the opportunity is not because interest rates are high. He just said for him at his level, the opportunity for him is the institutional buyers are really on the sidelines. They always buy a lot of different asset classes, and maybe they're like, we need to just kind of sit back and wait. We're having issues, maybe in office or this. And so they're just not in the market. So he says, if I don't have that competition, that's pretty good, especially if you're buying the bigger deals when they're in the market, you're competing with them. When they're out, they're non-existent. I know I was listening to a podcast with Old Capital, and they had the guy, one of the Texas brokers, Marcus and Millichap, has like 23 guys under him. He's saying the same thing. Institutional, money's just not here. So there is that opportunity. When you were competing for deals, when you are prior, were you always up against institutional buyers?
I'd say institutional focuses more on like 150, 200 plus units.
Okay.
And so that's kind of one thing that I like, being in that 75 plus range or larger. We've looked at $100 million portfolios before, but 75 units and then in between that 150 mark, there's not a lot of institutional guys. So kind of keeps us out of that competitive arena with them.
And then Tucson right now, if you're looking at deals, what are you probably looking at? Cap rates, price per door? What's kind of a deal that you'd make a move on, or, you'd think somebody could make a move on in today's market?
Yeah, we just bought one for $92,000 per unit.
Okay.
And so I think, but that was, our interest rate was what, 6.5, 6.7, something like that. And now they're at 8 today. So, and that's for like a single family home, you're getting 8%. So probably 80s. And I'm seeing Phoenix product, 100 plus units, cap rates on actuals, like a 6.5, and It's not penciling. And so Tucson historically is, at a higher cap rate than Phoenix. So it kind of just gives you the state of the market where we're at, right? But that's kind of what I'm seeing deal wise in Tucson.
And then what kind of debt, if you're putting on a building, are you doing you doing agency or bank?
If it qualifies for agency, we'll do that all day. Interest rates are probably 2 points less than bank, from what I'm seeing at least, and 4 points from Bridge. Bridge is in the 11% interest rate. Bank is 8, 9, depending on who you talk to, depending on the bank. Of course, you got to shop around. Agency is probably 7, from what I'm seeing. So that's where we're at.
What are you doing with the prepay? If obviously, they have a yield maintenance or step down, are you able to shorten it, buy it out? Because obviously you want to have the opportunity to refi. So how do you deal with that?
I always like step down more, just pretty standard. If you have a 5-year, 7-year, 10-year term, you got a 5.5, 4.4, 1.1 or whatever. And so if you can, I like that more because I know what I'm going to have to pay with yield maintenance. Whenever interest rates are high, your yield maintenance is lower, but whenever their interest rates are low, your yield maintenance is very high. So I can't predict that. So I like step downs over yield maintenance.
Okay. So you guys doing, if the market comes down and you got to refi, hope you might have to just pay a little bit of prepay, right? I mean, that's just life.
Yeah. You always have to weigh out the cost. If we can get, sometimes these bank guys, there's no prepayment penalty. And so that's, Whenever you're buying a deal, Kenny, or who's ever listening, you shop around, look at the best possible rates. Okay, look at the prepayment penalty, interest rates, your loan to value or loan to cost, how long you have to be in the deal. And so you go to agency, you go to bank, you can talk to a whole lot of brokers and they'll just put it on a platter and show you, or you can shop around yourself. I've done both and I prefer the broker route. But, it's such a deal by deal basis. You always want to look at all the options, be it bank, agency, and then see what is the best fit for that opportunity.
Yeah, because I think right now that's what we are, because we do financing, commercial, residential. And even if people are buying, an investment, they're doing a DSCR loan, non-QM loan. I'm like, you probably want to do a 1-year prepay. A lot of LOs don't talk about that. And so even here, good thing about California is we do, great for banks, multifamily. A lot of my wife's clients simply are not doing agency here because there's so many good banks here. Even now, I mean, our bank rates are probably high 6s, 7, very common.
Nice.
And we can do no prepay and stuff. But that's the thing, is a lot of people are weighing it out, maybe a 3-year on the first and 1 on the second. But I think a lot of people are knowing, hey, we're going to pay some sort of prepay. If we're going to have to refi out, and you do that because it's worth it.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So what is your what's kind of next for you? What else you have going on? Is there anything else you have going on besides your I think you have a podcast, right?
Yeah, I have the podcast called From Trial to Triumph. And I'm also launching a program that's going to help investors that are really residential real estate investors and they want to scale to buy their first apartment complex in 12 months or less. So I'm in the process of putting that program together, just putting the finishing touches on it. But still aggressively pursuing properties, in Arizona, Texas, Oklahoma, and, just staying very busy, man. I mean, you're a very busy guy. And so there's always something going on, be it we're managing properties and repair issues, contractor issues. It's just part of the business.
Are you guys self-managing or third party?
Third party.
Okay. Otherwise, a lot less time.
Dude, yeah. I'd die. There's no way.
That's tough. Yeah, we used to, we sold the company, but we're up to 1,500 units we manage and doing everything else. It's, we did that for about 5 years. We sold the company, but it's tough. It's a lot of work, but we learned a lot. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Like I pass all the knowledge on, but I tell people, yeah, you probably don't want to do this. I mean, it's not bad. I always tell people, if you're buying a 2 to 4 and you want to manage your first deal to get your feet wet and just to learn a little bit, but you start scaling and you have a job or, even if you're an entrepreneur or you're just trying to do what you're doing full time, it really will take away from your day to day of all the stuff where you're trying to raise capital, relationships. So I'm guessing all day you're spending on time. Obviously, you have to deal with issues and problems, but a lot of your day is just continue to build relationships, continue to meet new people, continue to talk to brokers. And that's really what it is. And just keep watching your markets and look for deals. And that's kind of what's a day consist of you, like what you're doing these days,
Yeah. Sometimes it involves coffee, meeting an investor in the morning, being on a podcast, hosting my own podcast, but a lot of social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, always networking, underwriting, looking at opportunities, and learning. There's always some time for learning. And right now I'm in a season of I'm putting 14-hour days in, honestly.
Good for you.
But normally I don't want 14-hour days, brother, but
no, but I think this is a season to do it. This is because know what's ahead. That's why I was saying good for you, because when I say that, I meant
I got you.
Not don't do that, but you know the opportunity.
Yeah.
Because you're going to win.
Yeah. But I'd love to, you got to find something that fills your heart, man. So many people get in this business. If I can say one thing that anyone takes away from the show, it would be this: is that if so many people get into real estate, they think they want the money, and 5 years later, they have the money, they have the assets, and they're divorcing their wife because they had an affair. Their kids hate them, and life is worse, right? And so find out what you actually want and what makes you happy, man, and spend time doing that. Because so many times we say we got to work to get to the end result, and that never happens. So find what makes you happy.
I agree. I mean, I'm sure you know who Ed Milet is, and that's why I love it. It's I think you listen to guys that are way ahead of you that could have anything they want. And just a guy at that level, and he just says, once you get that car and you get that house, then you're like, what's next? And like you said, if you made money, whether it's your first 100 grand, your first million, your first 10 million, whatever, it's people think they're going to get that car, get that house, get that girl, get this, and that's what's going to make them happy. I don't, or get that many apartments. It's really not. It's like, go meet any successful person. They're like, if they thought it did make them happy, like you said, they're probably divorced and miserable, and they'd probably give it back to just go backwards and say, I would do this all over. So much different.
Mm-hmm.
You're very wise for your age. And that's why Crystal and we do work together and stuff, but we've done a lot of counseling just because we did premarital counseling. Cause I was like, we work together. We're always together. We got to come together. But also is when you go home, you got to be like, turn it off. Then we have 2 little girls. So that's why we sold the management company. We're working so much. We're like, we can't have a family in this. We're going to be divorced. Our kids are going to hate us. So it's hard because we were used to working like you. I would say if you can do it now, do it. Like while you're young, you could do the 14 hours, do it. But it's hard when you have a family and stuff because you want to get home. You're like, what was the point of having kids then if you're not around,
Yeah. Yeah. Good for you, man. I think that's wise. Premarital counseling. God, so many people get married after like 1-2 years and they're divorced at 7. and then they just go on the cycle, right? So I think that's awesome, man.
Because they never fix the problem, which is look in the mirror and you got to fix yourself, And it's like, and you have to be willing to like own it and recognize it's not hard. It's easier to be like, oh, it's her fault or that fault. It's kind of like, well, you kept saying that about every person, or it's always that. It's like at some point we got to look at ourselves and go, hey, this is just us. This is me. Like if I'm continuing down this path, there's something wrong here. What do you think? A couple more questions. What do you think is, when you look out on the horizon? I know you're kind of into this day to day. What do you see? What are we going to see, you think, when we look back? If I talked to you and I did a podcast in October, what is today? October 19th or whatever we at, October 19th, 2025. If you had if you look back, what do you think if you look backwards, right? What do you think you'd say, okay, this is what I kind of would see maybe happening? Just a crystal ball, but none of us have one. Right?
Yeah. I think a recession is in 2024. And
how bad?
Not 2008 bad.
Okay.
Not by any means, but I think we're already starting to see less jobs. I just talked to someone yesterday, and they're letting 30% of their staff go.
What kind of company?
It's a tech company. There was a lot of that in tech, even what was that, 6 months ago?
Brutal.
3 months. Yeah. And the whole thing with Israel, I don't even know what's going to happen with Israel and how that's going to affect us. Gas prices went down, which is usually interesting. But anyway, so that's what I'm expecting, 2024, and then 2025, I think it'll get a little bit better. Maybe we'll still be dragging along in that, and people will be crying the blues and they'll be holding on to their cash and say, I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen, but that's going to be the time to buy, right? Probably early 2025. There's blood in the water, prices are low. And that's always what happens, man. Whenever it's a good time to buy, everyone's scared and timid. But when people are making money, people are making so much money and the market's hot and people starting to invest, that's when they lose money, right? So that's what I foresee happening.
Yeah, because I don't even think right now I'm not saying it's not a bad time to buy, but I think it's going to get better.
Yeah, I do as well.
Yeah. Last question. Always ask, what's your definition of generational wealth?
Ooh, what's most important to me is faith. And so, cool. Sharing Christ with my kids, man, that is number one. And it says in the Bible, if you want to leave a legacy for your kids, your grandkids, right? So I would love to be able to, it's hard because I see parents raise their kids and they give them everything that the kid wants, and the kids are spoiled brats. And so I'm almost tempted to not give my kids anything, Lord willing, if I have kids. So we'll see. I don't have children, but I would love to leave my kids something, pass on wisdom, give them a pole to fish, not just the fish. That's kind of, I don't want to leave my kids high and dry, but that's kind of what I define that as.
It's awesome. Caleb, where is the best way people can find you, learn more about you, contact you, give you money to buy deals?
That's funny.
Trying to help you out there.
Yeah, I love you, man. Instagram. So check us out, Red Sea Capital Group, or redseacapitalgroup.com. One of those two. Sweet. Well, Caleb, it's been fun. Thanks, Congrats on your success. Seriously, 25 years old. I don't even think it's like what you've accomplished. I would say with real estate and stuff, I just think where your head's at for a 25-year-old, you're on a good path. Cause, like we said, you could have done a lot of things, but if you're not in a good space, really, what's the point? You're not happy. Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I love what you're doing with the show, man. Keep it up. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. Yeah. If you're ever in San Diego, make sure you hit me up. Love it, man. Let's do it. Awesome. Cool. We're out. That was solid. Yeah. You asked good questions, man. I can tell you've done this a lot. I think it's a couple hundred now. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Wow. Well, I think being on interviewing, yeah, a lot. And also, I also watch. I just kept this recording. They'll cut this off. I also watch a lot of people. I've watched a lot of people interview too. I like watching just to learn. Mm-hmm. It's good, like people that are good. Because it's just so. I mean, right now it's like I don't even know why people watch TV. There's so much good stuff like this online. Yeah, absolutely. It's great. Did you, when you were starting off, did you rewatch your episodes or like rewatch yourself
The funny thing is I've never watched any of them.
Did you really?
Yep,
Nice.
never.
Cool.
I'm just not like that. So I think I've gotten better by watching other people, and I think you just get better too, just like flowing. Cause I was just at Housing Wire last week and I did these, and it was funny. We were like podcasting. There's all these people moving around. It was so loud. I'm like, can they even hear us? And I was with like Logan and then a couple of people, and that's 30 minutes. So you've got to flow fast and you just learn how to, like, I got the questions, but flow them in. They're like, man, you got a lot in. Even the guys like for 30 minutes and you got to flow. And I'm like, there's distractions. So I think just like putting yourself in random positions like that, where you're like, okay, people are like waving at you, taking pictures, video, and you're trying to like sit here and have a conversation. It's distracting. So you learn to like focus and be like, stick to the game plan. Don't vary off. Cause I was like, they're like, hey, we're cutting you in 30. We got the next guy coming on, like another pod. Well, I had one that was back to back, and then another guy's like, hey, I'm using it after you. So, and they were on a tight time frame because there's speakers going on in the other room. So I think you just get better doing all this stuff,
Yeah. That's cool. Well, Kenny, what can I be doing for you?
Honestly, man, like this podcast is good. Honestly, I learned from you. I think people learn from you, I think a lot of people ask me these questions. So I love it because now I'm like, dude, this guy's 25, go check out the podcast. Here he got started, I think it's cool because I think you answer questions. I think I tell people like, how do I get started? I tell people, I mean, you can buy courses and stuff. I'm like, why don't, especially San Diego, just go to meetups, go to every meetup, get obsessed with them, get in there, ask questions. I'm like, do that for a little bit and just come back and then see where your head's at,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's how I started.
Yeah.
So cool, man. When do you think this will go live?
I'm not sure with Mara. I'm guessing we release one every week. So we've got some in there, but I'll ask her, but I'm sure in the coming weeks.
It's not. Yeah. I was just curious. You don't need to figure it out or anything. I was just curious. Well, cool, man. If there's anything else I can do, please let me know.
Yeah. Hey, nice meeting you, brother. Appreciate the time.
You too, man.
All right. Have a good one. Okay, bye.
You too.
If you're already a real estate investor, you know that aside from cash flow, you also get huge tax benefits by investing in real estate. But are you taking full advantage of all the potential tax benefits? We've been working with Tim Looney at CSSI for a few years now, and he's saved us and our clients hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in taxes doing cost segregation studies on their properties. Let me give you a few examples. We bought a property in 2019. If we had just used straight line depreciation, we would have saved about $18,750 in taxes. But because we did a cost seg, we saved $258,000. That's $239,350 more than standard straight line depreciation in the first year. The other great thing is, if you're classified as a real estate professional, you can apply this to other sources of income like W-2 or 1099 income, and you can also roll over any unused depreciation to future years. If you've owned your properties for a few years already, don't worry, you can still do a cost seg and save big on your taxes. This is not tax advice, so consult your CPA to see if you qualify to take advantage of these benefits. Call or text him at 318-469-9861 to get your complimentary property analysis. Once again, that's 318-469-9861. And I'll also include his information in the show notes. You guys don't want to miss out on these tax savings.